95% of your brain goes on autopilot by the time you're about 35 years old. So then the idea is, how do we use our conscious brain to change the autopilot, right? A lot of people refer to it as your subconscious brain, which is, there's a lot of autopilot happening in our brain and our nervous system for good reason, right? You don't walk down the stairs going, let me put my left foot out, there's a lot of things you can do it without thinking.
I'm so curious about everything that you do. I have so many questions. I don't even know where to start when I
No
speak
worries.
to you. I do this. This is kind of how I roll with this podcast, since it's something new and it's something I've always wanted to do. And I'm really loving it. It's really interesting. I want to talk a little bit before we just jump in and do
course.
a podcast, because I want to know, what do you like to talk about? What is, of all the things that you do in your background, what is really your passion?
Yeah, I really love sharing about the science behind how do you activate these higher functions of our brain that most of us didn't know we can turn on at will. Research shows that it's pretty much shut off for about at least 70+% of our lives due to many different reasons, whether it's stress, frustration, whatever it is, right? Yeah. And if you learn a little bit of the basic science without it being too jargony, people can apply it and see some cool results. That's what I've been doing over the years. Yeah. I left behind my life in a pharmacy for this. It's been about 6 years now, full time. So before that, I was actually a supervisor over at LA County as a pharmacist for the hospital system.
LA County pharmacist. I didn't know LA County had like, what do you mean?
Yeah, they have six major hospitals and over 200 clinics. Olive View,
right.
LAC, USC. North of LA is Olive View, which is out in Sylmar. I don't know
Sylmar,
how it's pronounced. Sylmar.
Yeah.
So that's a county hospital. LAC, USC in LA is a county hospital. There's 6 of them. MLK, Harbor, UCLA. There's one in, out east, Ranchos Los Amigos. So there's 6 major hospitals that they have. Yeah.
Wow. So did you start this because of what you saw when you were in these pharmacies and how people acted and reacted? And is that what kind of shifted you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the main things that shifted me was I didn't actually want to be in pharmacy. So I was practicing 3 years out in New York City. I got fed up with it. And then that's why I moved to LA. I was doing filmmaking full time for 2 years. And that taught me a lot about marketing without realizing I learned about marketing. And then went back to pharmacy because we were living the starving artist lifestyle. And by the time I became a leader, that's when I was, it was frustrating. You know what I mean? The drama, the politics, the bureaucracy. And that's when I dove deep into, because of my healthcare background. It's when I went that deep into the neuroscience behind, like, how do our brains actually work? How do we help it perform better? How do we create better teams, better cultures, better leaders? And that's what I've been speaking about ever since. It helps when one of the articles you write reaches 7 million views, which helped me go full time in my business.
Really? So what did you write about that got you 7 million views?
It's a little bit about the brain science, about how our brain works. And the timing was just really good too, because it was during the pandemic that it went viral.
Oh,
so then
that's a nice way to start your career in something new, right?
Yeah, everything added up, right? The reason I was able to write a viral article is because of my filmmaking work, because we created viral short films that generated well over 30 million views on those pieces. And then the business side of things helped because by the time I left my pharmacy life as a supervisor, I had an opportunity to become a business coach. I had a mentor, a CEO of a business mentor me and they contracted me to be a business coach for their clients. So that taught me a lot about coaching as well. So it's a variety of experiences that are all coming together, right?
Do you think that everything that we react to, we can control?
Yes.
Really?
I don't like make absolute statements, but theoretically, yes.
100%. But you had said something interesting, is that you got fed up, and I'm just listening to what your life used to be like and what made you take such a dynamic change. And that's hard for people to do.
Yeah. I quit my career twice.
You did quit your career twice. I see that. So are you going to quit this and do something else? Or do you really
think this is
your passion?
Yeah, this is it. This is a thing that I'm sharing with anyone and everyone that will want to hear it. I've been fortunate to have gotten in front of audiences now over the years and even companies. And I just keep doing it because I know for a fact that it's going to be helpful for people, for whoever they find it. Yeah, whoever finds it helpful.
When you're talking to people, what is the most common aha moment for people when you're talking to them and coaching them?
One of the biggest aha moments for them is usually something along the lines of, oh, I thought this thing that I was doing was actually productive, that it was actually helpful. Me being a hard worker, me performing a lot, me, whatever it is. But it turns out they're only accessing a fraction of their potential. Yeah. And that they have these aha moments of what they thought was real wasn't real. A lot of, yeah, like that kind of stuff.
So what changes? What do you do? So I'm just going to give you an example. So if you're working every day and you think, okay, I've got to do X, Y, and Z to make this happen, to get this result
Mhm.
that I want to have happen in my business, and you do that every single day, what is it that so how much percentage of your brain are you working with every day when you're thinking like that, as opposed to, I'm going to make some changes because I think what I'm doing is working, but it's really not working. And
Yeah.
what can I do to improve that work? It's kind of an
Yeah.
open-ended question, and it's a big question.
No, it makes sense. Everyone's brains operate differently, but one of the main things to understand is whenever we're stressed out, whenever we're in an overwork mode, whatever you want to call it, a hustle mode, the brain is literally operating out of a mode where your brain can't think. It's very reactive. So people who are in a work hard, like an overworking mode, I'll call it overworking, right? People who are in an overworking mode, their brain is doing the exact same thing as if imagine a tiger walks into the room and is about to attack you. You're not going to look anywhere else except where that tiger is, right? Your brain actually develops tunnel vision. So what happens is when we're in our head down overwork mode, you're in the same tunnel vision, believe it or not. And because of that tunnel vision, what if outside of this tunnel were better solutions, better ideas? You see what I'm saying? More creative
No, no,
solutions.
I totally get it. But how do you go from, I know what my end result has to be, and
Right.
this is what I have to do to get there. How do you know how to
Correct.
get out of that path?
So if you teach yourself how to get out of that tunnel vision, then you can work smarter, not harder. So you can see more efficient ways, efficient solutions, better ideas, and you get to that solution faster, to that result faster.
So if you're in this pattern, what do you do to break that pattern? Because isn't it basically you're in patterns and you're trying to break those patterns?
Yeah, 95% of your brain goes on autopilot by the time you're about 35 years old.
Okay, so I'm way
So
past that. So I am completely on autopilot. Is
correct.
what
So
you're
then
telling
the idea is how do we use our conscious brain to change the autopilot, right? A lot of people refer to it as your subconscious brain, which is there's a lot of autopilot happening in our brain and our nervous system for good reason, right? You don't walk down the stairs going, let me put my left foot out, let me put my, there's a lot of things you can do it without thinking. Most people don't realize the autopilot also includes our pattern of thinking. Or we think about 70,000 thoughts a day, 90 to 95% of those thoughts, same thoughts as the day before. Those lead to how we feel, right? When we think angry thoughts, we might feel angry. When we think sad thoughts, we might feel sad. And because of those feelings, that's what results in the action, or most of the time, our reactions, where we react without thinking. So for a lot of us, our default is not feel good, right? So we either work our way, hoping that the stress will go away if we work hard enough, or sometimes we avoid, right? Sometimes we numb. Sometimes we freeze up and not make decisions. So when we get better at becoming aware of that first, of how our brain is programmed, because everyone's brains is programmed differently, then you can use your conscious brain to start rewiring some of that so that you should see results over time, if that makes sense. But it starts with awareness. And then the next phase is training ourselves a little bit on the science. Like, how does our brain actually work? How do we work with this? How do we actually change this autopilot? When we learn how to do that, and then you'll see the results. We act differently because of it. So that's it in a nutshell, right? If that makes sense.
No, that makes total sense. So give me an example about,
Sure.
I want to get out of this pattern. How do I even, okay, 500 questions. So let me start with number one. You don't even recognize that you are in this kind of gloomy behavior, first of all.
Yeah.
How do you even recognize that?
That's the first step. It's like, how do you become aware of it, that this is what's going on for you? This is what your autopilot is. From a coaching standpoint, I always work with a person's thoughts. Majority of the time, how they're thinking about a situation is totally untrue. But for whatever reason, in their brain, it's really true, right? Because their brain's in that tunnel vision. They've lived it. They have these experiences, these stories that they have in their mind. The neuroscience shows that, you ever hear that statistic? More than half of our memories are inaccurate. There's some sort of inaccuracy with most of our memories.
I hear people, I have a friend that always says there's his story and her story, and then somewhere in the middle, there's the truth.
Exactly. So put 10
Is that
people in a room, you'll have 10 different stories, right?
100%?
Because what your brain's paying attention to is different from what someone else's brain is paying attention to based on how you're wired, right? So then what's interesting though is a neuroscientist that I was chatting with one time a while back after a speaking event, he was sharing with me every time you access a memory, it further distorts that memory. Isn't that crazy? So each time you access a memory,
Really?
you're further distorting the memory because think about it. Up to that point in time, you've had a lot of more new information stored in your brain. So then now you're accessing a memory, it's getting mashed up with all of this other new information that's been stored in your brain. So it's further distorting the memory. So this is why people who go through traumatic events, they further distort because they keep thinking about it until it becomes a prison for their mind. And they're now stuck in that gloomy mode. So what we want to do is the first step is what's the awareness around how we're actually looking at a situation, what the story is, and then really break ourselves out of it by looking at it from a place. This is where, whether it's from outside help or whether you're able to do it on your own, it's how do you see what's actually true? That's what it is 1,000% of the time.
But
And
how do you
what,
see what's actually true? Because if we're saying that people make their own truth, how do
mhm.
you really, how do you make it,
Yeah, so
how do
that's
you
why I
get,
approach it from a scientific standpoint, right? Versus
okay,
versus a therapeutic standpoint.
okay.
When you look at the science behind how your brain works, and you can see the truth of how it actually works.
What is the
Um,
science in our brain that makes truth
so
actually
yeah,
truth?
so your brain only operates in one of two given modes, two states. It's that simple. It operates in what's called what I call a survival state or an executive state. So this thing I talk about all the time. So it's survival state or executive state. Survival state is the part of your brain that's very reactive. It's only meant to help you in actual life-threatening situations, though. Imagine like a tiger's in front of you, you're hiking and you see a snake, a rattlesnake, or whatever it is. Your brain has to react without thinking. That's the key part to understand. Because if you start thinking, you might already be dead. The problem is the thing is we're in this mode most of the time when we don't need it. So the other state, which is what's called your executive state, this is where a lot of your brain's higher functions come from. Critical thinking, creativity, empathy, your ability to have empathy, right? When you're scared and in survival, you're not empathetic, right? You're just thinking about yourself and your own survival. So the research shows that for about a majority of our lives, because of things like stress, anxiety, frustration, anger, whatever feelings don't feel that comfortable, your brain actually goes into a state of survival. Because what the research is showing is that your emotional pain can be just as painful as physical pain. So what happens is your brain reacts to these uncomfortable feelings as if it's a life-threatening situation when it's not life-threatening. And therefore, because of that, your brain's higher functions are offline now because you can only be in one or the other, executive state or survival state. So you're not
So,
accessing your critical thinking, you're not accessing your creativity, your empathy, all of that.
so if I'm sitting and there's someone sitting laying there in the hospital and they're very close to you and there's something significantly wrong with them, typically you want your emotion to take over and be very concerned and very worried and you're just very anxious about that person. But if you
Mm-hmm.
went into the executive mode, you'd be like, okay, this is why it's happening. This all makes sense to me. You could just be very rational. Is that what you're saying?
You could be rational, but more so, you'd be much more empathetic. What does this person really need right now? How can I help this person? When you're in survival, you're making it about yourself. I'm so worried. I'm so worried I'm going to lose you.
Oh, okay.
I'm so
Okay.
scared. So then, because of my anxiety, I'm going to overdo this or get over concerned. I'm going to, you know what I mean? I'm going to do all these things. And it's when it's survival state, who's it about? It's about yourself. I
So
mean,
you're right. So survival, we're always saying, I'm going to do this and I do this and I do this. And so when we're in front of a client and we're talking about, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this, instead of saying, what is it that you need? What are you
correct.
expecting? What are your
Because when you're in
expectations?
survival, your empathy is literally shut off. So then in sales, right, this is why it
Right.
screws people up in sales because they're nervous, they're scared. And what else are they thinking? Oh, this is going to be putting money on the table. I need this money. It's me. And then when you're the potential client, you can pick up on that kind of stuff. And that's when you're like, I don't know if I want to work with this person.
Do you think that most people even realize that they talk about themselves all of the time?
No, they don't. Because when you're in survival, you're in tunnel vision. You don't even know you're in it. You don't know you're in the tunnel when you're in the tunnel. So this is why it's so important to be aware of it first. What does this actually look like in daily life? What does survival state actually look like in daily life? And when you can see it, now you can change it.
So when someone's trying to make a life decision and it is about them, and you're saying, don't make it about yourself. So just say somebody wants to change. You made huge leaps. You changed your profession several times.
Yes.
So how did you get out of your survival way and get into your executive thought? So you could rationally go, How do you do that? Because that's so about you.
In terms of the actual transition.
Yeah, yeah, to
Yeah, I
make
mean,
make those big decisions because people get
mhm,
frozen with change that's going to affect them. So how do they apply that?
correct. So the first transition, I wished it was some sort of wise decision, but the first transition was more so out of pain, right? It was like, hey, I can't see myself doing this for the rest of my life, and I'm not happy. Whatever else is not this, I'm gonna try it now because I don't like it that much.
So
So
just to
that
move
was the
away
first
from
transition.
pain.
Correct. The
Okay.
second transition was more of a vision that was coming to me. So by then, it was a big risk, actually. So I was already a supervisor for LA County. I have a wife. My second kid was just born. And I got this opportunity to work with that CEO. They offered me a job to become a business coach. And I knew I wanted to grow something of mine. I just didn't know how to go about it. So I was just like, when else do you get mentored by an 8-figure business owner? But the contract was like a 75% plus pay cut for me. I was making pretty much nothing. So then that's when my
That's
wife was just
painful.
like, yeah. So that's when my wife was just like, so that was a moment of long term thinking. If I were to do this, what are the things that I would need to make sure I develop as a skill that this would be worth it for me in the long term, even though during the short term it's a financial hit. So I knew I wanted to get better at marketing. I knew I wanted to get better at copywriting. I knew I wanted to get better at communication and speaking and growing a business. So I was just very intentional about what I wanted to get out of it. And that paid off. A little over a year later, my article went viral, and then I made in a weekend what they were paying me for the whole year. So that's when my wife was just like, shouldn't you go full time if you did this over a weekend? And then that's when the ball started rolling for the business. So it was yeah, it was more of a long term thought, if that makes sense. I could have stayed in the county. They have great benefits and all of that, right? And the pay was really good, but it was worth it for me, even though plenty of other people thought I was crazy for doing it, because I would have been set for life in terms of career and all of that.
Yeah, but isn't it more? I know this sounds old school, but there's a part of you, a part of most people that don't realize it'd be so much better in your life if you were actually happy and enjoyed. I think it's, people
Yeah.
groan when they get up in the morning. It's like, why are you groaning? I get up in the morning and I love what I do. I change it all the time. I don't mind change. But when you meet with clients and you're trying to find out why they're afraid of making that change, it's crazy to me how much people are afraid of change.
Yeah.
And
And the irony is we're afraid of change. That's what happens when we're in survival, by the way. We don't like
okay.
change when we're in survival because it's biological. When we used to live in the caves or in the wild, if you go to uncertain territory, you might get killed by a wild animal. So it's very biological for us to not like change, especially when we're afraid. So we try to keep things the same. The irony is, this is a sad example, but this is why people in abusive relationships stay in abusive relationships. Their brain goes, at least this feels predictable. This feels the same. It's much more scarier to go out into the uncertain territory. What if I leave this relationship? I don't know what it looks like. What if it's worse? What if it's, you know what I mean? So, in order to avoid that, they stay in the relationship because at least it's predictable. So, in a sense, that's what we do to ourselves. We're in an abusive relationship with ourselves when we're trying to just keep things the same. But the irony is nothing is ever the same. Every second, everything is changing, including our bodies. We get a new breath every second, a new heartbeat. 20 million cells, plus million cells are replacing itself every second. The value of your dollar, you might say, I have the same dollar amount in my bank account. No, it doesn't. Every single day, that value is changing. Unfortunately, in not so a great way in our country right now and in many other countries, because we just keep printing money, right? But everything's always changing. So that's the thing is when we're in survival, we create this illusion for ourselves that feels the same, but it's not. We just,
And
but
that's
then
very
that's,
much, even if you go and you relate that to today's world, it seems like the whole world is in fight or flight mode right now.
that's
They're
exactly, it's gotten more extreme. Even in
like,
politics, there used to be a
what?
time where the two parties could shake hands. Now they won't even shake hands. It's like
Yeah,
petty,
but there
right?
used to be a time when you could sit down with your neighbor and you didn't care what political party they were, how
Correct.
they, you could just have conversation. And it seems like everybody is just, not everybody, I don't want to make everybody feel that way, but it's just, if you just turn the temperature down and had conversation? Because I clearly feel everybody can have a conversation if you choose to.
Yeah. That's why we live in a time where the amount of fear and the intensity of fear has gone up in people. Because that's
Do
what our
you think?
brain does is it gets very
Yeah.
tribal now. It gets very tribal. Our ability to handle adversity and difficult emotions, to have hard conversations, our ability to do that is diminishing, especially in the younger generations. This is why I really care about this because I have 3 little kids, right?
Yeah,
So,
how do you do this with kids because their brain is still growing?
mhm.
Talk about the younger kids. If you went, have you ever coached a group of kids?
Not a group of kids, but kids, my kids.
Your
You
kids,
you
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 coach your kids.
try,
Right. You
but when it's your kids, they get sick of it, right? Like
try.
they roll their eyes at you and stuff like that. But you try your best. But yeah, like it's something I really care about because there's a lot of reasons for them being in more fight flight than the older generations because of technology.
I didn't have all that information coming. I didn't have access to all that information. And the information that I see our kids having access to is not always, not that it was all accurate before, but there's less versions of it. There were less
Yeah,
versions of it then versus now. And it almost creates this consistent boxing match is what I
yeah,
feel we're in.
yeah.
Why don't
And
you coach a bunch of teenagers like a youth group? You'd probably be great at that.
yeah, I'm open to it. I'm open to speaking in groups like
Let's just
that.
change your business model a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, over the years too, I have been getting younger and younger. Most of my clients are actually older than me, but yeah, like I have been working with younger people. Like I have a potential client next month that might be coming in. It's a succession situation, right? Like dad owns a big
Right?
business and he's 23 years old and he's looking to take over the business, that kind of thing.
Wow.
And they want a coach for the younger because the dad has a coach, but the dad's coach is 80 years old, right?
Maybe a different point of view on
But
that.
what's interesting is they're very open to it. I've had younger people come and work with me. They had their parents pay for the package and all that kind of stuff. I've had stuff like that happen too.
I
But
think it's I think
it's
it's
important.
cool. I think it's really cool that a family would recognize that here's they're not saying, "Oh, you can't do it because you're 23." It's if you're going to be 23, then you don't know enough. So
You need to
we're
have the
going
right
to pay
support.
for you.
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing thing that they did for
Yeah.
this succession. It
Yeah.
really is because what they're going to learn, and they also that 23-year-old probably, if I were to guess, is pretty special already. Is my opinion. I have no idea,
Yeah.
but that's great. So where do you let me backtrack a little bit. So
Sure.
pharmacy. So you started in pharmacy and tell me what was happening while you were a pharmacist that made you start thinking about the brains not being used. What set of circumstances happened other than you just didn't like what you did?
Yeah. So the reason why I dove into the neuroscience stuff is I've always been a fan of personal development. Like I always loved personal development content, but I got really fed up with like, you go to these experiences, maybe you hear an inspirational speaker speak, you get all inspired, you're like, I'm going to change my life. And then you come home and what happens?
You
Maybe
sit on the
the
couch.
adrenaline. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It wears off and then you just go back to your usual autopilot. So that's when I was just like, what do you actually do about this? So then that's where my healthcare background came in handy because I'm like, I'm reading some science and I'm just like, wait, hold on. Like, what if I just learned how the brain actually worked? And that's what I dove really deep into. And then you test it out, right? You try it with clients. I've coached people for plenty of people for free in the past, and then you see it work. You see these, and yeah, I just remember moments where like clients, it was literally like life transformational. Like not because of me particularly doing something, but the information where it just connects the dots in people's brains where they can see what's happening inside of themselves. But what's also cool is you get to see what's happening in people all around you. So you take things less personally, right? And
Doesn't
you're
it
able to
doesn't
deal with,
it
yeah.
doesn't it make you feel good when you feel as if you helped somebody else feel better and
Yeah.
excited
Yeah.
about what they're doing? It's just, I think that's a great feeling, and it's if more people could figure out like you do something really good or somebody just out of the blue gives you an offhanded compliment that it's like I wasn't going for the compliment, but they just say something just very offside. It makes you feel good,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah. I mean,
you want other people to enjoy that feeling.
yeah. At the same time, too. Yeah. I love it. And at the same time, this is really a big love story to the part of myself that was hurting too. You know what I mean? Because I know what it felt like to be the kid that put a face in front of everyone, but at home he wasn't happy. You know what I mean? I was the kid that felt unimportant. And one of the stories I share is I remember on a Saturday night as a teenager, I'd be out drinking with my friends till 2, 3, my high school friends till 2, 3 in the morning, sleep 2 hours, wake up in the morning on a Sunday morning, step on stage as a worship leader, leading worship at church,
Ah!
right? And then looking at that because of like how much I felt unimportant, that my way to go into fight flight was to fight for people's approval. I'll be the way I think you want me to be with my high school friends, and vice versa with church friends, or whichever. You know what I mean?
So whoever you were in front of, you
Correct.
mimicked what their expectation was.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that type of pain where it's, I don't feel safe to just be myself. And I think it's more so of a thing that it feels scary to do that. It used to be in school, for example, your daily environment for most people, you do something embarrassing. It used to be the room just laughs at you and it blows over. But now you can whip out your phone and stream it live on the internet. And now it's permanent on the internet. God forbid it gets shared with a bunch of other people.
It
So,
lives forever now, which is the difference
correct.
between when I
The,
grew up and what your kids are
correct.
experiencing.
So
Yeah.
the risk is much higher to the brain. So the brain early on learns to shut down or learns to withdraw or isolate from other people, that kind of stuff. And I think it's escalating. So our ability to handle discomfort is diminishing. That's why our adolescents right now, the suicide rate became a hockey stick. It's hard to feel difficult emotions. And the stories you hear about why they commit suicide, it's partner broke up with them. So they kill themselves. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just their ability to handle difficult emotions is significantly diminishing. There's a lot of reasons why that is for a lot of people, and it's not everyone, of course. But yeah, this is why I care about this stuff. How do we help create more emotional resilience in ourselves so that we can maintain access to these higher functions that our brain has, where you're able to start creating some amazing things versus being stuck in a state of survival? And who are you just focused on? Me, right? Who
What's the
loves having transactional relationships? No one. But that's what we do when we're in
but
survival.
no, but I think some people thrive on the transactional relationship. It's like they're in and out. Thank you very much. On to the next.
Yeah. And
I
guaranteed at some
yeah.
point in their life, they burn out or they feel very unfulfilled. Because the problem, though, with that too is we think we can separate that, but it bleeds into our personal life too. We treat our family transactionally. That's what it is when we're in survival. And that was a big aha for me. That was the heartbreak. That was the thing that I broke down in tears, realizing, oh my God, I've been using my wife. I've been using my kids. I can claim I do these things for them because I love them. But then when get into an argument with my wife, what's my first line of defense? I do this and this for you. Why don't you do that and that for me? And it shows the
So
transactional nature I've been in. Yeah.
give an example, like what did you see in your own life that made you see that you were being transactional and not actually being having that executive side on where you were being empathetic? Give me an
Yeah.
example.
One story I often share is with my daughter. So when she was around 3, 4 years old, I used to say this phrase when she wasn't listening to me. I would say, "You're making me so mad right now." And I would get so upset. And
Right.
learning the brain science of all of this now, number one, when I'm angry, it has nothing to do with what's happening outside of me. It has everything to do with what's happened in my life. And for me, that was rough relationship with dad. I used to think angry thoughts. If I'm ever a bad dad, if I'm ever a dad, I'm not going to be a bad dad like him. So then my brain gets triggered when my daughter's not listening because my brain's going, hey, you're a bad dad. That's why she's not listening to you. You need to control this. So I go into fight mode. I yell at her. I scream at her. I'm literally verbally attacking my 3-year-old child who didn't deserve that. So that was the thing I realized, because the thing that really got me was just like, man, little girl, when being told you're making dad mad, what might she
At
start
3.
believing? At 3, oh, she can be the cause of someone else's emotions, which is totally untrue, right? And I'm like thinking, man, how might this impact a little girl like that as an adult? What happens if you have the angry boss or the unethical boss overworks her, and because she's afraid of making the boss mad, she complies and says yes to something she wants to say no to. The thing that really hit me was like, what happens if she ends up in a relationship one day and her partner tries to force her to do something she doesn't want to do because she's afraid of making the partner mad? She'll comply, right, as a reactive response. So that's when I apologized and I shared with her that If daddy's ever angry, it has nothing to do with her. I'm so sorry. What happens when we're angry is we're scared. If you go to a mommy lion with its babies, it will use anger to try to get you to back off because it's feeling so scared. It's feeling very vulnerable. And daddy, it's the same thing for daddy. And I simply changed my language from that moment on. Instead of you're making me mad, I just changed it to I'm feeling mad. And this is a huge lesson in ownership. Are we willing to own every one of our thoughts, every one of our feelings, every one of our actions? Because when we're in victim mode, blaming, that totally takes the power away from you changing the autopilot that you want to change. So that was a big aha moment for me. Becoming a parent really is a big mirror, isn't it? Right? Do you have kids? I don't know if you have kids.
I have a 26-year-old daughter, and
Mm,
it's interesting looking back on she was I say she was the odd one out in school. She didn't like to follow the rules. She just really beats to she still to this day beats to her own drummer. And
mhm,
she for me was very hard to figure out. And
mm,
sometimes she still is a little hard for me to figure out. But I have figured out finally, after all these years, she would say to me, I just want you to listen to me. I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen to me.
yes,
And it's very hard, especially as a mom, because as a mom, you want to fix everything. You don't want your
correct.
child to be sad or mad or hurt or whatever. So it's very hard for me just to go, her dad was much better at that.
Mm,
He'd sit back and go, honey, when I was a kid, and here's what you might want to think about. He had that calmness about him. And
yeah.
sometimes I would just rage. And
Because as parents, it's so vulnerable, isn't it?
yeah,
Out of the fight, flight, freeze response, the fix it response is a fight response. If you think about it, I'm feeling this
it's,
discomfort. How do I fix it so it goes away? Right?
I'm telling you that I feel, in my opinion, and everybody can disagree with me on this podcast, that's fine. Being a mom is one of the hardest jobs on the planet. And if you're a stay at home mom, God bless you.
Yeah.
It's so hard. It's so hard to wear all those hats and deal with all those emotions all day long. And when I see moms make it look so simple, it's like watching this brilliant executive.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
agree.
it's, yeah, you learn a lot. You learn a lot from your kids when you just sit back and stop trying to fix everything,
It's such
you
a big
know?
mirror, isn't it? I
Yeah.
remember like,
And she's, and like I said, she still beats to her own drum, but gosh, she's a really good kid. And
yeah.
she is so empathetic. Like I look
Mm.
sometimes, I'm like, how did that happen? How did that happen? Like, where'd you get that from? And then of course I'll take credit for it. Dad had nothing to do with it. No. She's a good kid, and she's very loyal, and she's quirky. She's really, and she's very successful in her own
Mm,
right.
nice.
I'm a proud mom as well.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very
They're huge
cool.
mirrors, aren't they? I remember as I got into all this science stuff, I became a parent during that time too. I just remember sitting there when your child's melting down. You ever have that reaction where it's just like you try to distract them some way? Oh, here's a candy or turn on the TV or whatever it is. I just remember sitting there realizing, oh my God, me trying to quote unquote fix the situation
Yeah.
has nothing to do with her. It's me having trouble sitting with this feeling that I'm feeling. So I try to make her stop feeling her feelings.
In the grocery
And
store when they're having a fit, and you're
right,
just
whatever it is. Yeah.
and whatever it is, and they're just having this severe meltdown because you're uncomfortable and we're embarrassed, and the kid's like, who knows what that 2-year-old's even thinking? And
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, good, I'll just wait. You just have, and people will look at me, and I'm like, it's not like I'm not smacking. She's having a meltdown. She's 2.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So parent,
Yeah.
and I think parenting nowadays is much harder. It's much harder.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
so much coming at them, so much.
There's a lot. Yeah. We just have so much information thrown at us too on a daily basis. The amount of stress people are going through, it's just skyrocketed over the years. There's more things to be worried about now, right?
What's
So,
what are you
yeah.
doing about what are you telling people to do to handle their stress? What are some quick tips for people to start handling their stress?
Yeah. There's the typical, like the quick tips in the short term when you're aware that you're feeling that level of stress. Breathing is definitely the most popular one, right? There's different styles of breathing. There's something called box breathing, a 5 second inhale, hold it for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds. There's that. There's something called the physiological sigh. If you ever see after your kid's done having a meltdown, you see them do that. They do that like big sigh. There's a way to do that too for adults, which is you take a deep breath and then you take a second deep breath and then you do a long exhale, which should be longer than the amount of inhale you did, like the seconds of inhaling. There's that. There's something called name it to tame it. This comes from the parenting psychology world. If you name your feelings, you tame your feelings. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling. So UCLA did this study where they had brain scans tied to people's heads. They would show people's faces in survival emotions, feelings that don't feel good, right? Anger, frustration. As soon as they saw the photo, the amygdala, which is their survival brain, immediately activated in the brain scans. But what was interesting was the researcher would be like, can you tell me what feeling this person's feeling on the photo? As soon as they named the feeling, oh, that's anger, that's sadness, the survival brain turned off, executive brain turned on. One of the reasons for this is, remember, when you're in survival, you literally can't think. To label something requires you to take a moment and think about it. So when you're labeling your feelings, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling frustrated, you're actually turning on your emotional regulation centers in your frontal lobe, which is right behind your forehead. So little tips like that are super helpful. Also paying attention to the awareness game. What does fight flight actually look like in daily life? That's the thing I teach a lot, is what does this actually look like? And the better you're at spotting it, the moment you become aware of it, that's when you can get better at not getting triggered into survival. One trick I usually share with people is, if you ever pay attention to yourself or someone else, just pay attention. Are they concerned about something or are they curious? You can't be curious when you're in survival because your brain's not in a mode to learn something new, which is also the same thing with parenting. If your child's melting down and you try to teach them a lesson, they're not going to learn the lesson because their brain's thinking centers are literally shut off. Just pay attention. Like, this applies to sales, applies to coaching. Is the person curious or are they concerned? Because if they're concerned, their brain's not thinking, they're in a survival state, they're not ready to hear new information, they want to feel safe. How can you connect with them to feel safe? And same for yourself. How can you connect with yourself to feel safe when you're feeling concerned about something? So those are like quick tips, but the long-term work really comes from, the deeper work really comes from the ability to change the autopilot.
So when you're coaching people, you coach one-on-one, you coach group. Tell me a little bit more of the business end of
Yeah,
it.
the business side of things, I have a signature package that I coach people on. It's basically like a 12-week period. I spend 4 hours with the individual over 2 days because I need to understand how the person's brain is actually wired, right? So I listen to your stories, what happened in your life, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the coaching that happens, which is where we really pay attention to what's driving your thought process, what's driving your feelings, what's driving your actions, or mostly reactions for a lot of us. And let's actually change that. So that happens through coaching. In addition to that, I supplement it with technology. So I don't know if you're familiar with technology like neurofeedback, biofeedback. Have you ever heard those terms?
Yeah, I've heard those before.
So yeah, so neurofeedback is literally a device that gives you live feedback. So you have a device on your forehead. You connect it with your phone app, your smartphone app, and it's literally can show you, am I in survival state right now or executive state?
Really?
So and the more aware you become of how often you're in survival state, just like you can have a muscle to flex, right? A
Yeah.
physical muscle, you can have a mental muscle to flex. Whenever you get in your survival, you just get stronger at getting out of survival just by practicing it. It's through meditation, right? But it literally, in live time, one of the experiences, like, imagine you hear some calm, peaceful rain. You put some headphones on. So it's telling you, okay, you're in executive state. But the moment you start stressing about something, you're worrying or something, it'll detect it because it's a specific brainwave. And then the calm, peaceful rain you might be hearing turns into a thunderstorm. So it's training you to calm your mind again. Okay, let's get back to it. Calm your mind again. Calm. So I found it to be a great practice because there's a lot of research behind meditation, but using technology like this, because one of the biggest complaints about meditation people say is just like, I don't know if I'm doing it right. Here's how you will know.
You don't know
I
what your
literally
brain is.
measure.
You don't know what your
Yeah,
brain is doing. Are you really not thinking? Or are you
correct.
really thinking about not thinking?
Correct.
It
So then
stresses
here
me
you
out.
go. There's live feedback literally based on measuring your brain waves, and it's telling you
Could
what
you
brain waves are
imagine if
jumping.
people walked around with these things on their head and you could say, oh, they're thinking, oh, they're stressing. And you could just see
Yeah.
everybody's like their little
Yeah.
graph in
So
real
it's
time.
really exciting. And then there's a biofeedback, which is you're measuring your body's nervous system, what state it's in, because your body's the first thing to react, right? When you're in survival. So based on that, you're measuring your body's state. There's a metric that you measure, something called your heart rate variability. And that shows if your body's in a fight flight state predominantly or not. And then it gives you a number. Based on that, you're trying to improve that number over time. So that's how I approach it. Yeah.
And so do you do this with a group of people?
Groups, I do workshops.
Okay.
Because yeah, the
And then
coaching side
one-on-one
is
you do
one
the
on
other.
one. Yeah,
Okay.
because it's a lot of sensitive information. You hear
Yeah.
some crazy stories and all that kind of stuff. So you keep that stuff one on one. But from a
So
group setting, it's more training and teaching. Yeah.
I don't want to throw a profession under the bus. So I'll ask it like this. If someone was seeing a psychologist or a doctor of
Yeah.
that profession all the time talking, and then instead went and did coaching the way you're doing it, is the
Hmm.
success rate with the way you're doing things going to be
Yeah.
better?
It's very effective because I approach it from a neurological perspective. Because in the real estate industry, it's very similar. It's very saturated. Anyone, and it's different in the real estate industry, but in the coaching industry, anyone with a pulse can call themselves a coach.
Correct.
It's not as regulated. Yeah, there's ICF and that kind of stuff, right? Which I also think is a business model, right? In my
Everything's
opinion,
a business model.
everything's a business model. Real estate, anyone with, they just need to study and get their license can call
Get a
themselves an
license.
agent. But then what? 90+% of them don't make more than
I think
X.
95%, I think the number is 10% of all agents do 90% of the business.
Something like that. It's the same in the
Yeah.
coaching industry. More than 90% of coaches don't make more than 30,000 a year, right? So, which is why it's imperative as a coach, you want to make sure you're actually producing success in your client based on what they want success to be, which also can be hard because sometimes it's subjective, right? I want a certain feeling versus I want a certain metric, right? So there's that aspect. So yeah, I agree with you. That was my gripe with the industry. I'm like, anyone with a pulse can call themselves a coach, but then you have these young 20-year-olds saying they can be a business coach or whatever, right? It's just with what
I'm like,
experience?
what do you know at 20 years old
Yeah.
about business?
Yeah. But
It's rude to say that, but
then it exists out there. It's extremely saturated. That's why for me, I wanted to make sure I approach it from a neurological standpoint. Does this actually work? Does it help? And I've tested it out now. And then you do your reps. I did my 10,000 plus hours of coaching individuals, right?
wow.
So you know what works. And experience helps a lot just doing your hours. I was very intentional about just doing my hours, just nonstop coaching. When I was doing the business coaching stuff for that company, I was managing at any given time 20 plus businesses at a time. So you just learn by doing. So I think the experience helps. My clients really like, I have the diverse set of experiences. I can speak business, I can speak coaching, I can speak mindset, I can speak science, I can understand business, that kind of stuff. So they like the combination.
I think I need to be one of your clients.
Yeah, I'm happy
I
to
think
answer any questions.
honestly, I think it's fascinating because it's just how we think and how we react. I find it's fat that because people are so different and you wonder, why do they act like that? Why is just that it's just the big giant why.
Yeah.
So here's what I would love to do. I would sit here and talk to you forever because I would
Yeah.
look at it as a therapy session, but that's your profession. So I never introduced you to my podcast, which I think
No,
is
you're good.
I'm like, okay, so we're done, but so
We can always find a time. Yeah.
so Dr. Choi, thank you for being on thank you for being on my podcast. I'm just saying it's been delightful. It's been so informative. It really has been quite the experience. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that listeners should know about you, about what you're doing that we didn't chit chat about?
Yeah. So the one thing that was the biggest aha moment for me was I remember there was this leader being asked a very cliche question about how do I find the perfect partner? As if there's such a thing as this one person in this world you can hold responsible for your happiness, which is what the brain's actually doing is who can I hold responsible for my happiness? So if I'm ever unhappy, at least I have someone to blame. That's what it's doing. This concept of how do I find the perfect one for me? And this leader was very astute and wise. And he responded with a simple question, which was, would you go out with yourself? And I remember that hit me like a ton of bricks because the first reaction in my mind was, no, I wouldn't go out with myself. And the deeper thing was, oh my God, if I don't have a healthy, loving relationship with myself, I will never have the capability of having one with someone else. And I remember this hit me because that was the moment when I was sharing earlier. I've been using my family because I don't like myself, because I have all these things that I don't like about myself. And I don't have a healthy way of relating to myself. It's preventing me from having these healthier relationships with other people. I continue to be transactional. I continue to be unempathetic. And I think that's a question we can all ask ourselves is how is your relationship with yourself? Do you care about yourself enough to have your own back when you're down? Do you love yourself enough to support yourself or get yourself the support that you need? I think that's a question for all of us that's important to ask on a daily basis. because otherwise we stay stuck in this survival state, in this tunnel, and we continue to not feel good every single day. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Why is it our default to not feel good? And I think this is an important thing to pay attention to.
It's so much better. It's so much nicer to feel good. And I
I
wonder
agree.
sometimes
Yeah.
if people have ever had a day where they've actually felt good, not just better, but like really good.
Yeah. So what if the science, this is why I get excited about science. What if the science can show you how to change that? If your autopilot's been programmed to not feel good on a daily basis, what if you can shift some of that where you feel better, more joy, more gratitude, more freedom, whatever the case may be? And the science shows we're all capable of doing it. We just need to learn it.
And of course, somebody watching is going to go, yeah, that's not right. And I'm like, okay, just give it a chance. Just give something a chance, right?
Yeah. But that's what we do when we're in survival.
I
You ever
know.
meet the person?
I
You ever
don't
meet the
know.
person where they're stuck on a problem and there's an easier way to do this, and they're like,
Yeah.
no, I'll
You know
keep
that
doing it the
Dr.
way I'm
Ross
doing.
podcast, he was crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like, now they think I'm crazy. I think it's wonderful. I think everybody should have as many experiences as they possibly can.
Yeah.
That's what
I
builds you.
agree.
How does someone get a hold of you if someone would like to hire you to
Yeah.
get out of
You can
flight?
reach out to me on LinkedIn, or I have a website, eugenekchoi.com. So that's where my website is. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or through my website. Or if you wanted to join my little community that I've been growing over the years, it's a small but mighty community right now where I teach all of this stuff, the deeper science about how to do this. It's a monthly membership program that I have. That's neurohackingschool.com. That's accessible on that website.
That's fabulous. I think I'm
Yeah.
going to join that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm going to
It'd be
join.
great to have you.
Join. I think it'd be fabulous. I think I could learn all sorts of things. That'd be great.
Love it. Yeah.
Thank you again for being on. I'm just saying, we got to a lot of points. I think it was very helpful. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. Super grateful to have been here.
It was great. With that, I will say goodbye and we'll be in touch. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Robin Battles, and I'm just saying, I want to thank you for listening. I hope you'll come back for future episodes and be sure to like, share, and follow. I'm just saying, let's get to the point. I'm Robin Battles.